This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 450 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and of course, because I love numbers and I love a cheeky in joke, I figured for this 450th episode, there was only one brewery that we could talk to, and that would be Indiana's 450 North. Joining us for the podcast is Stephen Boardman, Director of Sales. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Hello, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
And I say director of sales, but you wear lots of hats. You might be one of the few director of sales I know who also writes recipes for the brewery and is actively there and part of the brewing process. And so when it comes to the creative direction of the brewery, creative direction of festivals, creative direction of beers, and all of that, you are the one that drives that kind of program. We are going to talk about that today. Of course, 450 North, well known for heavily fruited, intensely fruited beers, and for a number of years now, 7, 8, 9 years or so. Actually, when did the brewery got started? What year, Stephen?
2012.
So, but you hit on heavily fruited beers and it became a phenomenon, and it's still a phenomenon. We can get them out here on shelves, and, so that Slushy XL series, your most rated beer on Untapped is, unicorn juice. So we're going to talk about making fruited beer. Of course, it seems like the only natural thing to do, but we're also going to talk about, some of the other things around that. We're going to talk about creative direction. We're going to talk about festivals in this day and age. And we're going to talk about having a brewery in the middle on a farm, a literal farm surrounded by fields, and, a farm where you also grow ingredients, right there adjacent to the brewery itself. Kind of a cool setup. And we're going to talk about all of that. But first, if you're looking for a brewery chiller that's worry-free and tough on GWP, then look no further. G&D Chiller's Elite 290 series uses propane as a natural refrigerant with extremely low global warming potential. This natural, highly efficient refrigerant with near zero GWP will help lower your facility's energy costs and impact on the environment. They're committed to a greener, more efficient future. Visit gdchillers.com to learn more. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain, now with all the ease of use benefits of dry yeast. Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. Also, as breweries expand beyond beer into other segments like mocktails and CBD beverages, Old Orchard is here to help. They can formulate custom blends featuring specialty ingredients. Whether trending flavor additions or nostalgic favorites, the next best thing is around the corner at Old Orchard. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself, what about your arc in beer, and then also give us the 450 North story.
So I've been in and out of the beer industry for, about 14 years now, working for a couple of local breweries in Louisville along the way. My background is food science and culinary. I was sous chef for a large catering operation in Louisville pre-COVID. Always been a big beer trader, always a hype chaser. Around 2019 when shutdown happened, things changed a lot. I wasn't working at the time and started really chasing beer in my free time. That's whenever I started to do a lot of trading with 450 North. I was sending it out to a lot of friends and receiving beer from, all over the world. I got my hands on some really good stuff in those days, and kind of just ignited the passion. I started a hot sauce company in the middle of COVID as well, and that kind of got me a little further into food science. Got a degree for food for human consumption during COVID as well. So I'm very much on the granular level of food and ingredients, fruit, sugars, all of that good stuff. So that really ignited my passion, and the position came open nearly 3 years ago for 450 for a sales representative. I was hired on at the same time as another guy. We split the U.S. in half, and I quickly took on more and more territory and more responsibilities and more travel. And now I'm where I'm at here, and it's been a blast.
Man, just taking that dream as a avid beer consumer with that intersection of food science and, finding the right pathway forward. That's pretty incredible. How about 450 North? Set the stage for people that haven't seen it or been there. Tell us about the brewery history and how it got started, and then made a kind of a pivot and kind of a shift and became known for especially for this heavily fruited style of beer.
Sure. So we actually opened a winery in 2000. It's Simmons Winery. There was a shortage of grapes in Indiana, and our owner, David Simmons, decided that there was a good opportunity to grow grapes. And, starting the winery, we use all of our own grapes. We had excess from what we were selling to other people. Started a winery, had a small tasting room here on the property that has been added onto. And the facade has changed a few times over the years, and mostly sweeter wines at this point. But we've done just about every style of wine, I'd like to say. We still have dry reds and dry whites available, but our biggest movers are the sweeter wines. And then in 2012, we started the brewery. It was a small brick oven pizza restaurant with 8 taps, and we were kind of on that haze craze at the beginning. We were well known for hazy IPAs well before our fruited sours. The Nugget series really took off. It was highly sought after in trades. A lot of proxies going for it. The resale market was going crazy for it. We're talking 2015, 2014 at this time.
We should note as an aside that we, back in 2019, did a breakout brewer story on 450 North, and there is, in the Craft Beer Brewing archives, a recipe for Fruity Nuggets IPA from that generation, 2019 era Fruity Nuggets IPA.
And that was one of our best received ones that we ever did. It's crazy when you look at Untappd, because people only know us for fruit beer, mostly, or the festival, or whatever they may know us for. But if you look on there, some of our highest rated beers are actually hazy IPAs from, 10, 15 years ago. And it's just funny to see. So that, haze wave is arguably never ended, I guess. We're still kind of riding it now, but sometime around 2017, the two sons, Aaron and Darren, had the idea to throw some fruit in some beer. Originally, it was called Slurpee. 7-Eleven didn't love that too much. I'll say that.
Yeah. One cease and desist later, right?
yeah. That name was very short-lived. And then we quickly changed to Slushy, and it grew and grew and grew. Originally it was just Slushy, then it was Slushy XL and Double XL, and then Triple XL. And we do the X's by the amount of fruit for the beer. So as you move up, you're getting more fruit per can and higher price point and all that stuff. Usually thicker mouthfeel depending on the fruit. Well, 2017 is when we started doing them. We like to claim OG as smoothie sours, but there were several on the wave. It was us, Other Half, The Veil, The Answer. There was several people doing it, but it was brand new. No one knew what was going on. No one knew what would happen when you added white chocolate. No one knew the best white chocolate to use. It was just a lot of fun figuring things out at the time, and being a consumer at the time, it was like just chasing down anything you could get because it was brand new. It was something that had never been done, and you had no idea what you were walking into. So then when, COVID hit, and everybody was at home with nothing to do, and some people with disposable income, we had just built the new location. And we were pretty well known for overnight releases at that point. We would release beer at 9, 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And we would have a lot of people down the street. Oftentimes we would rent out a tent and have a giant share overnight, and people would camp out. And it was, in a lot of people's minds, the ultimate line share. It was sometimes difficult to get to with a job, it wasn't always easy to come and get some 450 North at the time. But when you did, there was an amazing community of people that I think there's still a lot of us around today that have fond memories of then. And actually lots of those people have started their own breweries and seen success. It was a really special time in beer.
That's such an interesting way to think about it. I mean, because there is that way of thinking as like, oh, lines, can you believe we ever had to wait in lines? But I think you're right about that. I mean, I have sat in lines, in the early 20-teens for Crooked Stave releases. I have a fond memory of David Lynn, who, one of the founders of Comrade Brewing, walking through the line, pouring a growler of his, coffee stout out of a 64-ounce growler, for people waiting. I remember, Bill Young from Lambic.info making, goose mimosas. And, it was just it was a party, and the party was fun, and you actually, we would go down and meet up with friends and hang out. And, the line was strangely enough like a feature and not a bug in that kind of scenario, and helped there was a culture to it, and
I miss those days. I miss those days. A lot of times I can remember standing in a foot of snow at Listerman's back in the day in Cincinnati, and just everyone was excited to be there. Everyone was excited to bring something and share it, and it didn't matter if you had something that was a shelfie or something that was the rarest beer of the year. It was like you were happy to share it and have conversation, and it was almost all positive. We've kind of hit a few times in the industry where people get jaded and there's all this contention and anger about this and that. And it's like, man, back in the day, we used to just be happy to be there. It was, it was just fun to be with each other.
Well, I think that, there's that nature of a maturing market where any kind of culture can't maintain that. And while we say that, I think we also have some nostalgic rose-colored glasses. There were those folks that were lining up with paid mules to go buy things, and there was certainly lots of sniping on the internet around some of those kinds of behaviors. And and I think if we look back at it, there are some brewers that might admit that maybe did a little too much to kind of foment this idea of FOMO and create scarcity that was probably unnecessary just to drive some of that. And I think the danger now, and I had this conversation with Sean Hill earlier this year up in Vermont, that question of, well, is there energy behind craft beer anymore? And while I think the energy is different, I don't think that the intensity of behavior and passion amongst that top 1% that will go line up for stuff is the right barometer that we as an entire community should use for what the state of craft beer is now, right? That
absolutely.
In a lot of ways, we've achieved the thing that we hoped to achieve, in that it's not just that top 1% of the beer market that's standing out in a cornfield under a tent overnight camping just to get a new release of cans. Those cans are available, and so many more people are able to drink them these days than they once were, and enjoy them and share in that kind of passion. And I think that that is honestly, it is also a cool thing. It's a different thing. It's definitely a different kind of mode than the vibes of those days. And there, you're right. There was this kind of headiness to it where things were evolving fast, and we were all excited in how they were going. But now we kind of channel and control that in different kinds of ways. Anyway, sorry, that's an aside, but something I've been thinking about. I think we sometimes, unfortunately, benchmark to that intensity of passion amongst a very small number of people, and I don't know that that's the right proxy. That these days, the broad interest in craft beer is much healthier overall, even if it's not burning as hot, but the fire will smolder longer. If it burns too hot for too long, then things just burn out. Where, we want to keep a good rolling, even fire burning and burning and burning. And, so it's a good way to think about it. So, but you all, frankly, are out in the middle of fields in a agricultural environment. And in order to get people to drive out to the brewery, you have to have something special. Like they want to come out and, you needed to have that kind of pull to get people to even care.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing looking back at the past is, kind of on this topic, something you said about, scarcity and such is that you want to have this perceived scarcity, but you also don't want to be scarce. You want to have, enough product to fill the market, but you don't want to have too much because then, the beer geeks don't want it. So kind of thinking back to those days in 2019, we used to have people fly out from California, rent a U-Haul and drive the U-Haul back. And to think about that today is just like, that's nuts, And I mean, even arguably then, that was
still nuts then.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, it was like, I mean, how else is it going to get to California? Because it's not getting distributed. And
I mean, it's a form of gray market distribution, right? You had that was probably not quite legal for whoever that individual was who did it. When I say probably, it was not quite legal for that person to do that. But in that kind of scenario, just operating a shadow distribution business without all of the challenges and legality of doing that.
Yeah, we really benefited from the gray market, and that's good and bad for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of festivals up for it now today that people are like, man, I paid $60 a 4-pack back in the day. And I was like, what? Why'd you do that? I mean, I get it. You want it and somebody has it and you don't have to drive to Indiana. But at the same time, it's like, geez, man, like, what are we doing?
Well, and frankly, that scarcity is great for your ego, but it's not great for your economy, right?
Right.
$60 for a 4-pack that you sold for $18, like, doesn't help you that much as a brewery. It certainly helps whoever was engaging in this kind of arbitrage between a market value for something and what they paid for in a price. And but that's not again, for you as a business, it's really not the ideal scenario to be in. So pivoting out of that and finding a way to manage that in such that the resources come back to the brewery in a reasonable way. You can invest in all the things, in your own people and the equipment and the food and the ingredients, the food safety stuff, all the other things that come with it. That becomes an important part of that equation.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the fruit beer itself and how you make it. Maybe we'll start with that creative process, because when it comes to flavors, I mean that's kind of where it starts. You need a flavor and a name, because for this kind of market, both of those things connect really well. It's got to sound catchy and fun, but it also has to have a flavor, that feels like it's something that people, even if they don't have to trade for it, that they still want to spend that kind of money per can if it's on the shelf where they are. And we'll talk about that creative process. But first, give your customers a pleasant surprise with Audacia in your next IPA. Brought to you by Indie Hops, this descendant of Strata brings her own flair of catchy lilac lavender aroma and flavors of sweet tart berries and tangy lychee. Audacia loves family reunions with Strata and has even more fun when Citra, Simcoe, Amarillo, and others join the party. Let Audacia loose and watch the smiles spread. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And looking for a powerful no-rinse sanitizer that gets the job done fast? Meet SaniClean PAA Pro from 5 Star Chemicals. This EPA-registered PAA-based acid sanitizer is tough on beer stone and perfect for everything from kegs to packaging lines. Available in 2 convenient sizes, it's ideal for coarse sprayers, fermenters, and more. Trusted by pros, designed for performance, SaniClean PAA Pro helps you brew with confidence. Learn more at 5starchemicals.com. Brew better, brew with 5 Star. Also, this episode is sponsored by PackTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PackTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PakTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit paktech-opi.com. That's paktech-opi.com. So, Stephen, when you got started, you inherited a slushy program, Slushy XL, Slushy XXL, etc. And you as a consumer and a fanatic for those beers also understood the program, and also had the kind of responsibility to not screw it up, while also making sure that it stayed on this kind of leading edge of creativity in the fruit beer space. So talk about where it was when you got involved in that side of the business, and then talk about what that creative process now looks like. Innovation in this sense means finding ways to make building new combinations of fruit flavors, but also finding ways to bring out the intensity, but also the subtleness and depth in fruit character. Because if these are just saccharine sweet things full of the same standard fruit puree, like, they're not gonna hit and they're not gonna capture people's attention in the way that they do. And so it becomes a fine line. Talk to me about your creative process. Where do you start when you're thinking about creating a new beer?
So I've produced music and been in bands for, most of my life. So I try to see it through the same lens as that, sometimes when you go to make a song, you're looking at an end product or some kind of comparison, and this is where I want to end, and you're working towards that. And other times you sit down and you have nothing and you're just blank slate. Let's see what happens. Let's throw this at it and see what happens when I do this. And I try to have that same approach in coming up with new ideas for beers. So I try to do things from multiple angles, I would say. Whether that's random inspiration, maybe I'm traveling and have a dessert, or see a cocktail that's specific to a region or a city or whatever. And it's like, man, I want to do that, but I want to recreate this flavor in a smoothie sour or a gluten-free sour. Where to begin and how to get there at the end. And, that goes between, do I want the gluten-free base? Do I want the beer base? Do I want fruit? Do I want flavoring? Do I want spices? There's multiple ways to get to the end product. But how to get there in the cleanest, cheapest, most enjoyable fashion is, that's often the challenge. If you got unlimited resources and you want to make birthday cake, then, man, that's easy. But if you want to make birthday cake and not go out of business, that's a whole other story. So I would say the random inspiration is some of my favorite ones that I've had, just being out there and experiencing new things. But then there's also, all of our releases are themed. We have a really popular 420 and 710 release every year. We do our goat release, which is the greatest of all time. Luckily, it's easy because those recipes are there for me. But then, like, we've thrown in, Ninja Turtles and The Office and Nintendo and a soda release and an ice cream release. And so those themes, coming up with those sometimes are a good way of starting point. And then you work backwards. What's my favorite ice cream? What's my favorite popsicle that I used to get from the ice cream truck? So kind of setting that theme and then working in reverse is often the strategy as well. But then there's seasonality. You don't want to do a pumpkin beer in the middle of the summer most of the time. It's just doesn't hit. There's a time of year to do pumpkin beers. And arguably there's a time to do, heavy citrus lemonades and such when it's nice outside. Those don't make as much sense in the wintertime. So seasonality for sure plays into it, but also, berries change prices often. Berries are typically the most expensive fruit. So watching their trends and trying to not do berries when they're at their highest cost, and trying to capitalize on berries when they're at their lowest cost, that plays a big part as well. Sometimes it's simply the color. We have a beer called Monster Juice that we did that we wanted to use blue spirulina in. It was part of our Goosebumps release, and we wanted to do, UV green, something that just looked insane when you poured it. That if somebody ordered it across the bar from you, somebody's going to say, just go, what the hell is that, you know? And, you know, that one being UV green using seaweed, spirulina to get that color, all natural. I didn't want to do something. I mean, what does UV green taste like, you know? But I also didn't want to do something that leaned into that. I wanted it to be like, you're looking at it, you're drinking it, and then it's like, oh man, that's not UV green flavored. So that was a coconut lemonade. So it was like, you know, soft and then tropical in a way, but I don't know, UV green doesn't strike me as tropical most of the time. You don't think the neon acid when you're at the beach, I guess. So sometimes it's, you know, color leaning into the color, trying to make it red with red fruits, or sometimes it's trying to make it this color, but complete opposite in flavor. And then there's a lot of collaboration we do. You know, I'm very blessed that I have great relationships with so many other breweries in the world. You know, our beer festival, Corn Maze, gives me that opportunity to meet a lot of them face to face. We do several festivals throughout the year all across the world. And a lot of the collaboration is like, hey man, I got an idea that I want to do, you know, all these beers have something from your brand and something from our brand. How do we make that work? So in the past, you know, RER, we've done several with them, and it's like, how do we make the dog and the cup into one thing? How do we make what's his name, Otis, into a cup and do something that, you know, captures both of us in a way, but still is 450, but still new and unique. So it's you know, I set up a minefield in front of me on purpose when doing these things, because it's like I want to step on these mines that push me to create something new. So I would say it's pretty bird-brained. You know, I actively try and challenge myself with multiple approaches, multiple ways of thought. You know, I often ask my collaborators and our servers, our bartenders, does this make sense to you? Is this even somewhat appetizing? You know, this year for Corn Maze, we did a pickle lemonade. And I've been wanting to do a pickle beer for quite some time. I love pickle beers. They're extremely polarizing. You either love them or hate them. I feel like there's almost no middle ground. But a pickle lemonade was just weird enough. It was like, you know, people who hate pickles but love lemonade, they're probably going to taste it and they may love it. And it went over really well. You know, Chris from Beer Zombies came up to me at Zool this year at their festival, Kill the Lights. It was like, man, that thing was really damn good. He said, I ended up taking home a 4-pack and sharing it with my wife. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but you got to try it. I mean, it's just enough salt and just enough pickle that, like, it makes no sense. If you told me what was in it, probably order a different beer. But if you put it in front of me, it's like, it's a new experience. It's unique. And that's
salty cucumber, you know, and citrus doesn't sound terrible. Like, you know, that I could absolutely see that working. I love that it is, you know, there's a brewery mode out there in the world, which is let's make a beer and refine and refine and refine and refine and refine and refine and then, you know, keep adjusting and keep making it better and better year over year. And this is just the exact opposite of that creative process of new, you know, and some old favorites, obviously, of course. There are some of those that you go back to and you find new ways to make it, but it's definitely about exploring the realms of what's possible, and not just in terms of how do we make a new flavor combinations. Sometimes it's even about, yeah, like you say, texture and like a color. I remember years ago, Matt Tarpey from the Veil sent me some videos of a project he was trying to work on. He wanted to make a beer glow in the dark, and he did succeed at that and found an ingredient from a European source of sorts. And I don't think they ever released that beer because they ultimately couldn't prove that it was truly food safe. And as much as the supplier and you know, anyway, there was that thing like, you know, you keep trying to source these things that are going to make it interesting and create some buzz and build a story out there. You know, and so that means a lot of what you do is also figuring out where to get things that are also going to taste really good or to perform in the kind of technical way. Talk a little bit about that process, you know, because evaluating these ingredients, you talk about getting berries when they're in season. And that implies that you are working with fruit that isn't just coming in in some sort of processed form and that you are trying to find. So talk to me a little bit about how you go about finding the right sources for these ingredients that are going to give you the right kind of depth of flavor you're looking for.
First off, gotta shout out our good friends at Oregon Fruit. We have
Sure,
to be,
sure.
one of their best accounts in the world, I would think. And they've been great to us over the years. It's funny, most beer festivals just show up and all the brewers are wearing Yakima shirts and such, and I always just kind of tongue in cheek wear my Oregon Fruit stuff to be like, I don't have any, Yakima doesn't send us free stuff often, but Oregon Fruit's always willing to give us something to show out a little bit.
I love it. I love it. Like, own it, I mean, it's your thing. You own it. Like, don't run away from it. Don't shy away. Like, this is your thing. It's great.
Yeah. And, fruit is extremely expensive. He received criticism over the years, especially for pricing, but fruit is obnoxiously expensive. Not everyone realizes that, but fruit is very, very, very expensive. And that's where a lot of our cost is. So sourcing fruit is sometimes the challenge. We're always looking for, new suppliers with competitive pricing, but also great product. We've started using a few new people over the years, trying to get things from, regionally where it makes sense, citrus from the Caribbean, and from Florida area. And, makes the most sense. It's very consistent. So that's always that's a unique challenge that we face, I would say.
You're primarily trying to source aseptic puree, or in
Yes.
some of these, are you using just puree that you then process to pasteurize or stabilize yourselves?
Almost solely aseptic.
Okay.
Just for the simple fact that, we had re-fermentation issues back in the day, and we purchased a pasteurizer to avoid that. And we want to do everything in our power and use all of our knowledge to make sure that we never have those issues again from a quality standpoint, and just for the simple fact that, hey, we learned our lesson and we're trying to always be better. But, with the exponential cost of fruit, it's never going down. It's always going up, unfortunately, just like, almost everything else. We have started leaning into, flavorings and soda syrups and extracts and spices, and just, really trying to get outside the box and figure out what the TTB will let us do and how we can do that in a effective and tasteful way. So, we've used, cereal flavorings along with fruit to create Lucky Charms, or, it's always like we do a lot of benchtop trials.
Cereal flavorings. Where do you get cereal flavorings from?
Oh man, you should see my bookmarks on Google. I have quite a few of them, and always finding more.
But you work outside of just the brewing world. I mean, the baking world in particular has quite a few sources for these kinds of natural flavors that can find their way into some of these things.
Yeah. I mean, like coming from the food world, especially food science. I ran a wholesale bakery for a number of years there, and just knowing what's out there. I think that a lot of brewers, they look at what Oregon Fruit has and they're like, okay, well, how do we use this? For me, it's more along the lines of, what can I get from Oregon Fruit? What can I get from the farmer's market that I'm allowed to use from the TTB? I'm always walking their straight and narrow line. But then
the grass list.
Yeah. But then, what does Cisco have? What can I get from Webstrong? What can I get from all these other people that may not be in the portfolio of some of these other brewers? So trying to have that, trying to bring my experience into it in a way that creates something unique. So, I mean, it's really just like, I don't know. Some days I wake up and I say, man, I really want to make a wild berry Pop-Tart beer. How do I do that? And it's not like you can just Google, hey, who makes wild berry Pop-Tart beer flavoring and how much do I got to dump into this? It's sometimes it really is working in reverse and just taking knowledge we've gained in the past of what flavorings work well and what don't, and what fruits hold up. And it's a very sporadic and ever-changing challenge, It's not ever the same thinking process when it comes to that kind of stuff around here.
That sounds like you're the right person for this challenge. I would love to, drill down on some of that and think about some of those flavors. And not, I won't ask you for the entirety of your secret playbook for spices and flavorings for these, but I'm just curious when I, talk to Brett Coleman Baker at Urban Artifact. He's got some definite ideas about because they do a lot of their own fruit processing. Mm-hmm. They'll buy unpasteurized fruit, non-aseptic puree, and then process and cook that themselves in order to pasteurize it. But then they also certainly use lots of other ingredients, spices, vanilla, etc., and even in like very low threshold means in order to heighten some of those fruit flavors. And I'd love to talk to you about some of those, tricks that you use with certain fruits in order to improve that kind of fruit character, or not improve, but even like, I think some of these spices, if I were to look at it, like in a visual context, it's like running a little sharpening filter on a photo. It just kind of pops some of the edges a little bit more. It takes this kind of, smooth and gauzy thing and it kind of brings out some of the edges, because some of the edges in between these, along that flavor spectrum, create points of interest. Whereas if it's all just one kind of smooth, sweet thing, it's not quite as interesting when we don't have some of those edges to latch onto. So I want to talk to you about how you do that. But first, when it comes to packaging your brew, think Heartprint, the original in digital can printing. With 3 locations across North America, the Heartprint team has your back from concept to can. Count on fast turnarounds, no minimums, graphic design support, and rock solid can quality, all on 100% infinitely recyclable cans. Get 10% off your first can order when you mention the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. Open an account at heartprint.com. That's HARTPRINT.com, or email info@heartprint for details. And Brightly Software, a Siemens company, partners with organizations at every stage of their asset lifecycle journey. Brightly is a complete asset management and operations software that enhances organizational sustainability, compliance, and efficiency through data-driven decision-making. Streamline maintenance, simplify capital planning, and optimize resources with solutions uniquely designed to support long-term goals. Learn more at brightlysoftware.com. Also, the combination of a beer tradition stretching back over centuries, passion displayed by today's brewers, and unparalleled brewing science and technology make Belgium the home of exceptional beers. Famous for its extensive range of beer styles, Flanders boasts a brewing heritage dating back to the Middle Ages. Many of its top brewmasters still use the same recipes and brewing methods that have been passed down from generation to generation. At the same time, a new wave of innovative craft brewers are embracing the Belgian tradition of brewing for flavor rather than rules, while exploring new ingredients, recipes, and brewing methods. These exciting vibes make Flanders beer scene more dynamic than ever. Come to Flanders in 2026 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of UNESCO recognition and drink in this inspiring beer culture. Speaking of Flanders, when people listen to this podcast, I will actually be in Flanders recording some podcasts with Belgian brewers that will show up in January here on the podcast feed. Cannot wait. Everyone should go visit Flanders, go visit Belgium, and enjoy that brewing tradition. Okay, Stephen, let's talk about some of the tricks that you have up your sleeve for highlighting some of these fruit characters using some non-fruit ingredients. You think about making a beer that has that kind of crusty, bready, or toaster pastry kind of flavor to it. How do you reverse engineer that kind of flavor to add that kind of, breadiness or pastriness on top of the fruit kind of character?
Yeah. Quick little throwback to something you said a minute ago. I just wanted to say that Urban Artifact, talking about innovation with fruit and everything, their astronaut food series was also like just mind-bending to me, that they were freeze-drying all the fruit to get that ridiculously high ABV, and that was just a shout out to them. That was an insane innovation in my opinion. I mean, no one still is doing that. it may not be the most trendy, crazy popular thing in the world, but got a lot of respect for those guys because that that was innovative and very unique, and they're very special.
We've got a video. Yeah, we've got a video class up on our video library with Brett, and if anyone is interested in that, it is a top to bottom look at how they brew fruit beer, and it is one of the in terms of saturation levels of all he's got a list of I don't know 40 or 50 different fruits and kind of gram per liter concentration to hit the right kinds of flavor from each of those. It's truly, I mean, that kind of discipline that he's brought to this space is it's incredible, and absolutely love what they're doing. And as a result of that, we actually built a fruit dilution calculator based on his algorithm.
Nice.
And actually he recommended it to us, hey, we should, and so we just built it as a tool on beerandbrewing.com so that anyone, any brewer out there that wants to kind of calculate their own fruit dilution can just use the free tool on the website. So it's all there. Yes, 100% agree with you. Really smart stuff there.
That's awesome. But to the tricks up my sleeve. Again, I think it comes from the food world, and the best example I have is you're making a pan sauce with demi-glace, and you're trying to make something that's super fatty and a lot of beef flavor to it, and you're going to pour it over potatoes or beef or whatever the use is. There's a lot of balance to it. It's not just how do I dump beef flavor into this and get beef. There's a lot of, you're balancing salt and sugar, fat and acid. And I try to take that same approach with recipes, that, you can't make something that's all sugar. You got to have a little salt to it, or else it's cloying. It doesn't, the perceived sweetness goes way up when you start using a little bit of salt. Same with fats and acids. You can start at a pretty low pH, start dumping fruit and everything into it, and you raise that pH up some, but you're still dealing in something that's pretty acidic. So kind of balancing that with maybe cream cheese or vanilla, even something with a little bit of fat content to it, to kind of weigh that out in a way that makes it palatable. I would say that's first and foremost in my mind, because it's very easy to make something completely unbalanced. And I mean, I guess there are a few things I've had in my life that are really unbalanced that do taste good, but for the most part, you got to have that balance for it to make sense in your brain as a consumer. And a lot of people, when they go into these things, they don't even consider that. And that's kind of the point, that, when you're eating that beef gravy on top of potatoes, you're not sitting there going, well, there's just enough lemon juice in this to make the fat notes pop out over top and really make it work together. And the same goes with a smoothie sour. You're not sitting there thinking oh man, why did they put pretzels in this? Those pretzels have a little bit of salt. They have a little bit of that bready character that kind of tone down some of those acids, and give you a well-balanced end result. So that's always my most important thing in my head, just coming from the food world, is that, if you're going to dump all these sugars and all these fruits into it, there's got to be something on the backbone to kind of pull it back down for your palate and for your brain to catch it.
You just mentioned cream cheese, and so I assume that you're using cream cheese powder, because that seems to be the form that a lot of brewers use it in.
Yeah, we've used powder, we use flavoring. We've tried several different approaches over the years.
How does that fat integrate into beer, or does it? We talk, when we think about that kind of dairy and fat, we'll obviously revert to lactose, but that's really just sugar. It doesn't have it's not the kind of the round fat kind of character that you're looking for. But I would assume that some of that fat would just simply not make it through into beer. Is my assumption wrong on that?
Well, I mean, everything is a little bit, as far as solubility, everything's a little different. So if you're dealing with, cream cheese powder, for one, you can't just take a base beer and throw a bunch of cream cheese powder into it and boom, you have a cream cheese beer. It's not going to be soluble in that way. It's not going to come out the way you want it. there's got to be some starch to it. Especially when we're talking about pasteurizing, exposing it to its insane amount of heat very quickly and then cooling it back down. You're kind of denaturing a lot of the proteins in the fruits and such. So you have to have some starch to hold that together. And there's starchier fruits than others, bananas being the highest, cherries being very high as well. So you got to work in reverse. That, if I'm going to be using all of these powders that are not always the most soluble, you want to be adding some fruit for it to grab onto. So you can't use a ton of cream cheese powder and then a whole bunch of syrups and flavorings and hope for the best. There's got to be some kind of starchy something in there to kind of grab it all and keep it together, because beer's not starchy,
Right. It's the exact opposite of when we think about dry hopping and hazy IPA. We're trying to create, very small proteins so that they don't pull, they don't settle out and pull, all this great, hop character with them. In this case, you are only going to use that if you know that you're going to have suspended starchy fruit in the actual beer, so that that those kind of fats have something to keep them in this overall thing. Like, it just has to be there in order for that to even work.
Yep, absolutely.
Interesting. Well, and then how do you maintain that kind of stability? Obviously, with these fruit beers, with this much material, like actual fruit material in the beer itself, like you are promoting that kind of thick beer experience, that big mouthfeel. But I mean, everything likes to settle out over time. Are there some techniques that you use to make sure that you can get that integrated, or is this just one of those cases where some of the breweries that send us beer, I get cans and they're labeled upside down so that so that you keep them that way in your fridge and then flip them by the time you need to open it and drink it?
Well,
which, by the way, I mean, we joke about that, but I mean,
it works.
Like Hefeweizen, this is the oldest trick in the book, for kegs of Hefeweizen, at beer bars and such.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have some tricks, as far as trying to suspend it. But inevitably, like you said, gravity and time, things do fall to the bottom. It's going to happen. It happens in our kegs. It happens in our cans. If you ever see me at a beer festival, I often get laughed at because every time I pour one around, I store them all upside down in the ice bins. I almost always pour from cans because I can get the most consistency out of that. That way I'm not getting a lot of sludge at the bottom. And, at the very end, I'm pouring pudding because that's all that's left in the keg. So I'm almost always pouring cans and pick them up, flip them over, and I give them a shake. And, often the people pouring next to me look over at me like, "Are you shaking beer?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am. I wouldn't shake your beer, and I know it's sacrilegious and wrong by all means, but for us it works. It's
also, this beer is so thick. Just try to get the CO2 out of it, okay? Just try.
Yeah.
They will that CO2 will have its own physical challenge in even coming out of
it's in the quicksand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's we still keep on our cans to agitate it, and we tell all of our accounts that purchase kegs to agitate it, and we try our best to keep everything suspended. But like you said, inevitably things do fall out. It does happen. So I think that early on in the smoothie sour days, no one knew that, and that was a big problem, especially when we started selling kegs, because we didn't always put kegs out of this beer. We had accounts reaching out to us, especially when we would use banana or blueberry, because they always seem to thicken afterwards. They get thicker in the solution for whatever reason, and it was always those kegs in particular that people would reach out and it's just stop pouring. It's like, and you really got to agitate it, and it's not storing it upside down, and it's not. It's just the simple fact if you need to go in there and agitate that thing twice a shift. So I mean, there's a nuance to it, and I think a lot of people didn't know that to begin with, and now luckily, distributors know, accounts know, we educate people. I still run into it, it still happens, but for the most part, the industry is like, I get it, you don't shake an IPA keg, but you do shake the smoothie sour. Like that knowledge is known now, where a couple of years ago, no one had any idea what the hell this was, and myself included. And that's kind of the magic behind it. But one of the things that we do to keep things suspended, we fruit the day before we can. And we do that first thing in the morning. We hold it in suspension with CO2, run it under pressure, just to continuously move it around, make sure everything is nice and mixed in and suspended, and straight into canning. As soon as we take it off the pressure, it's straight into canning, runs through the pasteurizer, and there we are.
You pasteurize in the can, tunnel pasteurize? Yeah.
Yep, tunnel pasteurizer. That's always the thing people want to see when they come to our brewery, other brewers, just because there's not a lot of them out there. It's probably the most expensive thing in our brew house, and thank God we invested in it when we did, because it's really helped us, achieve distribution worldwide. And I'm confident in our cans going to China and going to Australia and being warm, cold. Otherwise, I wouldn't have confidence in it.
Yeah, it seems like we are beyond the era of exploding cans and re-fermentation. And, for the last number of years, or for the most part, and the last number of years, that has not been, it was a hot button thing in 2018, 2019, those kinds of exampos of, I bought this at the brewery and it blew up in my backseat. It's a learning process.
One of the funny things to me now is, I was having this conversation with LeBron from Little John Brewing in Tennessee, that there's almost, it still happens. I don't think it happens to the extent that it used to with exploding cans. I mean, you still have re-fermentation from several brands, not just one in particular. But now if you look on Untappd, sometimes you'll see these fruit beers with enormous heads on them, and they're, giant and huge bubbles, and people are like, oh my God, the mouthfeel on this thing. And it's like, I don't think that was intentional. I don't think we're can conditioning smoothie sours, but I mean, maybe we are. I don't know. But it's almost
some people like a little ropiness, Stephen. I mean, it adds to the mouthfeel, right?
I think at one point it was so taboo, and people were so mad about it happening, and then now it's almost on full circle to where it's like, oh man, look at these giant bubbles on this pour. It's like, yeah.
What do you carbonate these to? Obviously, carbonating a liquid that is that thick, you like you say, you have to recirculate in order to make sure that everything gets in there. They are carbonated, and what is the right level of carbonation?
I don't know the exact number on that. I would have to ask my cellarman, Aaron Simmons. But I do know that we do different levels depending on the SKU. Depending on the thickness. So we launched Slushy Lights, which are gluten-free sours. They tend to be lean into a little more flavoring and, powders and such versus fruit content. They're our lowest cost smoothie sour. So they're kind of more, I would say, like health conscious, trying to adapt to trends that, they're lower ABV. You can have more of these in one sitting versus having one and being bloated, So we tend to carbonate those a little higher because of that. But then whenever we're getting into something super duper thick, I think, yes, we carbonate it, but at some point, what really is the point of it? Because the carbonation is just, you can fight it all day long, but when you're making, right, you can't carbonate pudding, It just doesn't work.
At barely stout carbonation levels, just to give it a little bit of a lift, and just to add a little bit of that carbonic bite to it. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's talk about those base beers. This gluten-free base sounds interesting to me. My youngest son is celiac, and so that issue is one that's important to me. I'm curious about this. Like in terms of base beers that you build for each of these, they're in some way kind of inspired by a Berliner Weiss base. Mm-hmm. You take them in very different intense directions from there. But so is that a barley and a wheat base in the regular base, and then for gluten-free, are you using gluten-free grain, or is that more of a sugar fermentation?
Dextrose. We use dextrose, and then there's several people in the industry who use dextrose and maltodextrin. Some people use straight up cane sugar. There's a lot of approaches to it. We found that dextrose is nice, ferments clean. fairly quick. It has a touch of body to it just from the corn in the dextrose, the corn flour. So it's been reliable for us, and it's fairly cheap. So it helps with that light label to get it down to an affordable price versus some of our higher price SKUs. On those we've tried several different yeasts. We kind of bounce between a champagne and a seltzer yeast. I will say some of the turbo yeast we've tried, we made truly on accident, and kind of had those metallic notes to it that I wouldn't recommend to somebody out there trying to make a gluten-free seltzer base to dump fruit onto, because you will end up with that kind of aluminum foil aspect to it. That was a lesson learned on that one. But then, yeah, the beer base, we use two-row pills and malt. We use a little dextrose to increase the bricks on that if necessary. USO5 almost always for that. Clean, easy, cheap. And then, we used to kettle sour everything we made. And because of the repetition, we used to do releases every 3 weeks. So it was just turn and burn, always new beer going into the fermenters, always packaging, always kettle souring. So it was like the CIP started to be really strenuous, and it just started to be really difficult to keep up with that with the kettle souring for 90% of our production. So now we use a souring agent, a Berliner agent, and it helps us to dial in that pH going into the bright. And kind of the thought on that, like I've had some people kind of cringe at that a little bit. And the thing to keep in mind, I think, with smoothie sours is that people, I had this debate with the kind of the think tank when we were talking about the gluten-frees, is that, do people really want this? It's like, I think they do, not only because there are a lot of celiac and gluten aversion and such now. There's also a lot more health conscious people that just want something a little bit less bloating. And but also, like, when you're drinking a smoothie sour, I don't know many people that drink and say, man, this base beer just has the right noble hops to it. I can really taste the sads on this thing. So like, you got to keep in mind the end product we're making doesn't really, we're not claiming to make like the best lager in the world and dump fruit into it. It's just not what we do. And we have no problem saying that, I'm not out here trying to make a cohesion level lager to dump a bunch of strawberries into. It just doesn't make sense.
No one needs to talk about the quality of your canvas and your frame when they're looking at the painting that's on top of it.
Exactly.
You're kind of missing, that's not the point.
That's a very, very good example.
Yeah. Any other, interesting kinds of flavors that you've been excited about over the last year? Some either, fruit flavor blends or other kind of creative projects that got other than, pickle lemonade that, that posed an interesting creative challenge for you that you learned a lot from going down that road?
It's not really new to the industry, but sodas. Way back in the day, we did a cherry cola, and I remember, like, this is when I was a consumer, trying it and be like, damn, this is odd, and Evil Twin did a lot of cola sours back in the day, and there's been some spread throughout recently, but keeping costs in mind and trying to have new innovations and such. In the past year, I've really dove into our Coca-Cola rep. I'm probably one of his favorite accounts because I'm always like, hey man, can you get me some Faygo syrup, or like, what's available out there, or do you know anyone that can get me some of this? And then like kind of leaning into even regional sodas. In Kentucky we have something called Ale 8, a late one is the saying for it. It's Kentucky only. It's a ginger soda that's somewhere in between like a Sprite, ginger ale, and Mountain Dew. They're extremely tasty, very unique. Most people have no idea what they are. They go great with bourbon, but trying to kind of capture that because it's known regionally. How do we get that with just enough ginger without it being too spicy? Just trying to execute those while sometimes using the syrups or flavorings to do it, but also using something to elevate it. Like we did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles drop last year, or this year actually, and we did something called Ooze Cup, and it was blue spirulina, Mountain Dew, Cara orange, lemon, and lime. And I don't know if you remember those gas station Mountain Dew slushies back in the day, but it was dead on Mountain Dew slushy. And there was actually a festival at Porta that I brought some Mountain Dew, and I would pour them side by side and ask people, which one do you like more? And they'd hold one up, and it's thick and green, and it looks more appealing almost because it's like, man, what is this? And 10 out of 10 people said that the beer was better than the soda, but it was dead on the soda flavor. So like that's been an interesting hurdle, and it's really got my wheels turning as far as like, well, damn, how do I make root beer now? And not like not your father's root beer or something. Like, how do I make everything that's great about root beer in a drinkable smoothie sour fashion that's thick and coat your palate, and but it isn't like, I don't want to do banana root beer or something. I want to do root beer and it be root beer without having to dump random orange or whatever into it. I want to capture that ending aspect. So that's been one that's really got my attention lately. Just trying to figure out, how to get that end product in a unique way it hits all the senses. You get the smell, the taste, the look, the feel if you want to pick it up.
Sure. Well, let's zoom out here as we finish up and talk about one of the things you talked about at the very start, beer festivals in this day and age. Beer festivals are a way that a lot of people around the world became familiar with the beer the 450 North makes. That or your trader network that filtered it out there for you to the far corners of the planet. But these days, pouring at festivals around the world is a way that a lot of people drink that beer. But creating a great festival is more and more of a challenge, because there is certainly that feel that amongst that previously enthusiastic beer geek crowd, that they've seen it all, that they've done it all. You all have a pretty unique beer festival yourselves that weighs into your local environment. It's a corn maze festival at the brewery, right?
Yep. So we are located on a corn farm. It's been in the family for over 250 years. So we cut out about 18 acres of corn and make a maze, and 10 or 11 circles in the maze and several pathways going throughout, and about 10 or 11 breweries per square. And something that's really unique about it is it is an experience that you're coming not just for a beer festival. You're coming and you're surrounded by this environment. It's like it's almost like Disney World. You're in this place that is very unique, and it's almost hard to walk in and not kind of get captured by the moment and the environment. And that's something that I think we're really blessed with, that we own the property. We don't rent the property. We own the corn. We grow the corn. We cut the corn. So it's like we can really throw in weird designs and art installations and unique experiences throughout, and music here and food there. And, it's not so much of like, and what venue are we going to rent to do this? And I've been to a lot of great festivals that take place in a hotel lobby, but there's something to say about taking it and putting it somewhere just out of the ordinary. That was something cool with Zool this year. They moved it to the baseball stadium, and it was just so awesome. I mean, on the field, they had all the big giant screens with the brewery logos on them and such. Like, they really made that, they leaned into that baseball stadium and made it like the place to be. You felt like you were in this experience. And I think that's kind of where festivals are going. Like, ticket sales for festivals have gone down a lot over the past few years. They're not the destination they used to be, especially with distribution getting better and better and better. Before we got fired up, we were talking about, Trillium being on the shelf in Colorado. Like, I remember when you had to fight someone to get Trillium. I mean, it was like, that was a very hard to get beer. And now, you can find it if you look hard enough in a lot of states. or you can order it directly to your house. So a lot of people are like, man, what's the point of going to a festival? I can just order this to my house and save money and watch a movie with the family. And I get it. So it's really, yeah, you have to think of it in a unique way when throwing a beer festival. There's got to be some kind of pull. There's got to be something that makes it an experience more than just like I'm coming in, going to drink 100 beers in a day. While that's still a lot of fun, you can do that several places around the country, around the world at this point, relatively easy with, great lineups of breweries.
Yeah, building that experience is increasingly the thing it's something that all of us in the beer world have to stay focused on, right? That we're not competing just against, people drinking beer at home. We're competing against them sitting on their phones and watching reels and TikToks and not drinking beer, but not even socializing with each other outside of the digital space. I think that's even the bigger competitive issue. It's not that, beer festivals aren't compelling anymore. It's that attention is increasingly being sucked up by these digital devices in our pockets, and we are not going out and spending time with each other as much, but finding ways to get people out there and doing it. And in a funny way, I think there's something cool, especially in this corn maze idea of making an event that's also so photogenic that it becomes a place where you're not there only to sample beers. You're also going to take pictures of yourself in a cornfield and this unique, unusual kind of environment, doing something fun with friends, and finding those things that are enough, that create enough gravity to pull people out of their houses and get them out to do stuff with each other. I think that's the challenge that we all face now. We talk a lot about, and I've just been working on a brewing industry guide over the last couple of days to finish this up and just create an infographic about this. The challenge is not that fewer people are drinking beer. That seems to be the thing that a lot of people aren't drinking beer like they used to. Like, that's wrong. The stats are there. The same percentage of the population actually in 2025 drinks beer as they did in 2015 over the last 10 years. Now, the population has increased significantly in that time. There are actually 10 million more beer drinkers in the United States of legal drinking age in 2025 than there were in 2015. The thing that's changed is the per capita consumption has gone way down. The same number of people are drinking. Everyone is just drinking less often, less frequently. And, and is maybe some of that's health driven and that we shouldn't cry about that, but maybe some of it's also experience driven. And we need to give people those kinds of occasions to get out of the house, to get together with friends, to come to a place, to drink a beer together, to share and be social, or to even take pictures and put out there on the Instagram to make other people jealous about the awesome times that they're having out in a cornfield drinking killer beer in Indiana.
And that's something that I learned from my time in the music industry, that, the experience, I think that's everything at this point. A lot of these music festivals that you see today are ridiculously expensive and the price just continues to go up. But one thing they do offer is it's not just music, it's community and experience and art installations. And there's, there's so much more to do there than just stand in front of the stage and see music, that it's, you forget that you are where you are, that you're in the middle of a field in Ohio. It's like you almost get transported to this other place. So that's something we've really tried to lean into with the themes of Corn Maze. This year we finally, after much fighting, we did the spooky theme. So we had, just random installations all over the place of just Halloween decorations and people in costume and such. And man, if we could do it at night in a safe way, it would be a blast. But there's just no way for that to happen. But creating that experience that like sets us apart from some of these other festivals. And that's something that we have. I think Snallygaster has, I think Zool has, Tripping Animals at Irie Jungle. There's these festivals that do have this experience tied to it that like keep you thinking about and wanting to come back. And they're constantly adding on and innovating. And, in 24, we added distilleries to the experience. So now we have a distillery experience outside of the Corn Maze that's included in your ticket cost. So you can try several spirits from producers here in Indiana. We added camping this year. which we were terrified to do. Just liability and then all of those things that come with it, and then trying to keep everybody safe, and while also making it fun and encapsulating and everything. And this year was a little bit of a test run for that. I think we have our eyes kind of set on making that a big part of it next year. So it's always just trying to create something new, and like, don't follow trends, make trends. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Give it a shot. See what happens. Would you have fun doing it? If you can see it from your point of view, and it sounds like fun, then I guarantee somebody's going to agree with it.
That, Stephen, is a great place to bring this to a close. Don't just follow trends, make them. And if it seems fun to you, someone else probably will think that too. No, I think that's a phenomenal note that kind of sums all of this up, whether it's the beer, whether it's the events and festival, whether, all of that together. And and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this. G&D Chiller's Elite 290 Series Chiller uses propane as a natural refrigerant with extremely low GWP. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers the best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. Hit the refresh button on your fruit flavors with the latest additions from Old Orchard. Give your customers a pleasant surprise with Audacia from Indie Hops in your next IPA. Santa Clean PAA Pro from 5 Star Chemicals is tough on beer stone and perfect for everything from kegs to packaging lines. PacTex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. Heart Print has your back from concept to can with fast turnarounds and no minimums. Brightly software enhances your data-driven decision-making. And come to Flanders in 2026 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of UNESCO recognition. I hop on a plane tonight. I'm going to be in Flanders when people hear this episode. And, but if you've enjoyed this one and any others, go to beerandbrewing.com. Click on that subscribe button for subscribers. You can check out the recipe from 450 North for fruity nuggets, which is right there. And I think, maybe we'll work on getting a more updated, maybe a more, similar fruit-focused recipe from 450 North up there. Something a little more in the current era than that one from vintage 2019. But hey, it's out there and it's right there for you, but only for subscribers. Stephen, if people want to learn more about 450 North, the beers that you make, come visit the brewery, check out the Corn Maze Beer Festival, et cetera, where do they find you out there in the digital space and in real life?
450 North Brewing on Instagram and Facebook. And then 450northbeerrelease.com is our website. And then we are located right here in Columbus, Indiana, right here in the middle of corn country, a little bit of a hole in the middle of nowhere, but Columbus is a beautiful city, really well known for its architecture, and it's a good little visit if you need a getaway. And we have wine, spirits, and beer at this point. It's a fun little trip.
I have to come visit. I need to get to Washington, Indiana, of all places, in that kind of southern end of Indiana. My great-grandmother, as a wing of the Historical Museum in Washington, Indiana, because she was chronicling the events of their small town, many years ago. And I have never been, but the Stella Bogner collection is there in the History Museum in Washington, Indiana. So haven't been. Going to go down there and grab my dad, go to Louisville, drink some bourbon. Maybe we'll pop out to 450 North and come see the corn country in effect. Anyway, it's been great talking with you about fruit beer, Stephen. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.